Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Our current session focuses on what is a theory. I hope and expect by the end of this session you would be able to understand the concept of the term theory. Well, I would define it on two levels. On the very first level, I would define it in general terms. Generally speaking, a theory is a set of statements that is developed through a process of continued abstractions. Well, in this definition, what is important is continued abstractions. So the first parameter that we find to define a theory is that it is something that is abstract. It is something that is believed in, and it is a set of some beliefs, continued abstractions. On the second level, I would define it as a generalized statement aimed at explaining a phenomenon. This definition particularly tells us the purpose of a theory. And what is the purpose of a theory? To explain a process or a phenomenon, to give us insights into how does a phenomenon happen or how does a process take place. Well, my dear students, to understand language teaching methods, it's very important to understand the distinction between theory and practice as well. Separation between theory and practice is, as I said, very, very crucial. So, for instance, in the context of language 2 education or L2 education, theory is a set of insights and concepts derived from academic disciplines. I would just give you some examples. For example, from the discipline of general education, from linguistic sciences, from second language acquisition, from cognitive psychology, etc. As compared and contrasted to this, practice is a set of teaching and learning strategies indicated by the theorist or the syllabus designer or the materials producer, and it is adopted or is adapted by the teacher to be used in the class for the purposes of teaching and learning. So, the basic distinction between a theory and a practice is that theory is conceptual and is something abstract, whereas its application for the processes or purposes of teaching and learning in the classroom makes it practice. Well, ideally speaking, theory and practice should go hand in hand and they should inform each other. And therefore, they should constitute a unified whole, which means there should be a kind of synchronization between the two. Different researchers, linguists, and other academics have given distinctions between different types of theories. So one distinction that I would talk about is the professional theory and personal theory. Well, professional theory is created and perpetuated within the professional culture. So for instance, in the culture of teaching, there are different theories of language learning and teaching, and they are used by all the practitioners. A professional theory is widely known and it is understood like, for example, the developmental stages of Piaget. He has given the stages of development of human brain and the child. So these are the stages that are shared, known set of information by all the educationists or practitioners in education. A professional theory is something that is generally transmitted via teacher or through professional training. When we compare with it what is personal theory, well, personal theory is an individual's theory that is unique to each person, which is individually developed. And how is it developed? It is developed through the process of, putting a professional theory into practice. So by putting a professional theory into practice, actually, because everybody interprets a professional theory in a different way, so these varied interpretations of a professional theory would be the personal theories of different people. In other words, a personal theory depends on how each person, practitioner, or teacher interprets and adapts any professional theory during the process of teaching and learning. Professional theory belongs to the domain of the theorist, whereas personal theory, we may say, belongs to the domain of teacher. Well, when it comes to teacher's theory of practice, I would say theorizing is an intellectual activity. There is no, confined parameters for that, where we would say that only theorists can set certain theories or can present certain theories. Teachers who perform teaching learning processes in the class, they can also present theories. Alexander, 1984, and then in 1986, makes distinction between theory as product and theory as process. So theory as product, again, is a kind of set of concepts which may come from a teacher or from a theorist, whereas theory as a process is the kind of practical application or practice of that theory that takes place in the classroom. There are different theories of language as well. I would refer to three important theoretical views of language. Explicitly or implicitly, they inform current approaches and methods that are used in language teaching. The first one that I would refer to is the traditional and the structural view, according to which language is a system of structurally related elements for the coding of meaning. Now, according to this theory, where it is believed to be based on structure, then the learning takes place when, mastery of elements of this system that are defined in terms of phonological units, for example, phonemes, grammatical units, for example, clauses, phrases, sentences, etc., when they are learned by the students. In other words, by learning the structure or the system of the language, according to this theory, the learners learn a language. The second view is functional view, and according to this theory, language is a vehicle for the expression of functional meanings. So the communicative movement in language teaching subscribes to this view of language, where, learning process cannot be restricted to the form, rather it has to address the function for which purpose language is being used. The third is interactional view, and according to this, language as a vehicle for the realization of interpersonal relations and for the performance of social transactions between individuals. This is how language is used. So according to this interactional view, the purpose of language is to help people interact or to have communication. A learning theory, my dear students, underlying an approach or method responds to mainly two questions. One, what are the psycholinguistic and cognitive processes involved in the language learning process? And two, what are the conditions that need to be met in order for these language processes to be activated? So, what we need to understand is we cannot separate theory then from practice. Process-oriented theories build on learning processes such as habit formation processes, induction processes, inferencing, hypothesis testing, and generalization. On the other hand, condition-oriented theories emphasize the nature of the human and physical context in which any language learning takes place. I hope this would have given you some idea of what a theory is.